or talk if you want to talk.
All right,
It's your world, Roger. We're all just living in it.
Oh, yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
All right, and we'll go live in about a minute now, if you guys don't mind.
It says we are live.
And we're live. Welcome to the No Faces Comic Chat. Starting early. With me, as always, I have to my metaphorical left and or right, I don't know. Left hand on my right hand side, pass it and Prince Albert can. And we've got Metarog, aka Metarog, for coming at you from his multitude of gropitude, or what's that cave called? What's that little
multitude of gropitude?
What?
What kind of alliteration is that?
I don't know. You named the place. I didn't name the place. What are you picking on me for?
No, you didn't. You're still sour about DS beating you out on that contest.
Let me tell you something.
I know
there was some awful shady. Oh my gosh! Oh, Chris at Journals and Comics. Are you okay? Are you okay, Chris?
I'm all right. I'm okay. I don't
was
need
that
a medic.
Earthquake?
Oh,
was that an earthquake?
California shakes over here, right?
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
His nerves have got him.
Let's see. All right. Are we good?
And Steve Whiting, if you're watching, that man threw his camera all over the room and still didn't get a picture of his face or his crotch. Now, come on, Steve. You can do better.
That's dedication, man. That's dedication for you. You know, bodily injury over showing your face or your crotch. I mean, tell you.
We appreciate that. We have, does anyone know who we are? We got Chris at Journals and Comics joining us. Say greetings, everyone.
What is going on? Again, thank you guys for having me. Excuse the rumble in the jungle there, but I think we're all now moving forward.
Glad to have all the bugs worked out, and even the little fire ants biting you in the ankles. Does anyone know or anyone have any earthly idea what our team name is tonight? And for those of you uninitiated, because I get this comment often, the team name is just, anything after the with, and it says that's the team name. So, or the, whatever, the superhero team. So, Chris, you know who we are tonight?
The Embosses cover bosses.
That'll work. We'll take it.
That'll work.
He's still a little shook up from his recent incident.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yes, the No Faces Comic Chat with the Embossed cover bosses. And see, Roger, you didn't even have to get pulled off the bench this time. Aren't you pleased with that?
I'm glad you hit Chris on this one. Let me tell you.
Just sit there and relax.
I am so glad, man. The enunciation there was a little rough, man. I tell you, I'm glad it was Chris, not me.
I know. I try to be kind to you all, but it just never works out. And in the comments section, we already got them there, Rob Boswell, and no wonder if the mic is hot. We got Metarog A's, of course. We got Magic Lasso. I had another topic scheduled, so we will postpone that topic for when the old Magic Lasso can join us. So we're going to have him on the show coming up. We're excited about that. He's still there. Just Rob and nobody else hanging. All right, the comic collector. Welcome. He's got a new avatar there, so everybody enjoy that. We got Unruly Simeon is in the house. Well, it just refreshed. Give me a minute. All right. Unruly Simeon's in the house. Good to have you. Always. Man from Beantown. I wonder where he's from. I don't know. Probably New York.
Yeah. Maybe New Zealand.
I'm sure it is. He's from the great state of Perth. We got Hello Party and Not Party People. That's about right. That describes our thank you, Deadpool Really Awesome. Because as we know, Roger, he's a no party people. And Chris can't even stop partying long enough to put the camera down. So we're glad to have every kind of person here. Hello from heroes to icons, saying what's up to the brothers. Alex Big Blue, a fellow Kentuckian. We are full of Kentuckians around here. So there's going to be a lot of cousins and child support. We got Werewolf by Lunchtime. Werewolf by Lunchtime. He is actually from the great state of Perth, is he not? or the provinces, or what do they have over there? Sects or prefectas? What do they got over there in Australia? You let us know. We got Comic Collector. I think
it's states.
Is it states?
I think so.
All right. Well, we got Roger over there thinking while he's doing that, we're going to, hey, what's up? Carolina Chris is in the house. You know, I've thought about bringing him on, but I didn't know. I needed 2 weeks to recover from Rob's potty mouth 2 weeks ago. It took me 2 weeks to get over it. Excessive amount of obscenities.
He wasn't that bad.
He wasn't that bad, but I tell you, Carolina Chris, he's got a sailor's tongue too. So it's I don't know. He's a good fellow. I like him a lot. We got Mr. Gretzky.
He's cool.
He's a cool guy. Thank you, Mr. Gretzky, for joining us. We got Bigglesworth in the house. Still waiting for I tell you, I'm sub to Bigglesworth. You guys should be sub to Bigglesworth. Someday this guy's going to make a video and it's going to blow our minds. So even if people don't have any videos, I'll usually sub them up in great anticipation. So always looking for that.
He's on Instagram though. He does show a lot of comics on Instagram.
Yes, he does. Always looking for that Bibio. We got the Bourbon Brothers in the house. Absolutely. James Gallegos. Look at this guy. So James Gallegos tried to enter. Where is he? Look. Oh my gosh. Yay for BUB'S. All right, there you go. Now that's $1 per. So if I get 2 ladies in here, that'll be $4, Rob. No cheating the system.
Oh man.
So
man,
we appreciate showing love to the channel. As you know, all of these fine things that you see before you are always, it costs money to put this show on, unfortunately, these days, to give you this high production value. And so we want you to know that we appreciate everything you do for us. And for every donation, there will be a thought made in your honor to something comic related. So thank you again. Let's see what else we got going on here. Oh, what's that? Oh, sorry about that, Roger. We got.
I'm ignoring you.
Just now, huh? It's
just now. Yeah, it took a little while. Oh, look what Area 51, $1.49 per show. Yeah, Mike. I think you're overestimating the cost of the show there a bit.
That might be Canadian dollars too. It's probably like 99 cents here.
It's probably less than $1. Oh man. Oh, Carolina Chris. Holy smokes. He wants to be on bad, obviously.
Oh, wait, hold on. Wait, hold on. You're getting ahead of me now. Wait, I get poor James Gallegos. I've said his name 3 times.
Oh, James Gallegos. Yeah. What? Yeah.
All right.
What happened? What happened?
Well, he left anyway. Well, thanks a lot. He tried to sneak in entry to my contest video via Instagram by just showing a book, no video. So I was like, I almost let him in, but another person had already prize tagged him. So I was like, he technically already has an entry. So I can't, what if he won and he had 2 entries and never did a video? That would be, he would be pretty hot.
That would be a bad precedent to set. Really.
Yeah. Rayman from the great state of the UK. I don't know. What do you even call that place? Oh, we're glad to have you. Carolina Chris, 9.8 boys in the house. We got William Smallwood. Thank you and good evening. Slim's Comics and More saying, hey, everybody. Good to have you. Stickers made. Oh, goodness. We got some back work going on here. What's a grocery store ran out of Kentucky. This is not good. What's states, I think. Oh, man, we're states. All right, we got the answer.
Yeah, states.
It's states. Bake the Snake is in the house. We'll remind him tomorrow where he was tonight. Jackson.
Oh man, you are terrible, man. You are terrible.
Jackson Roy
tonight.
Kirk. We always got to give him a little "Hey, what's up?" to the Jackson Roy Kirk.
Jackson Roy
But he says, since we're all friends here, we can just call him Jack Roy Kirk, and we can leave out the son. So we appreciate that. There's 1,000.
There's a reason why it's Jackson Roy Kirk. If you know your Star Trek, there's a reason why.
Yes, absolutely. I know why.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
No, I don't know why. Why is it?
I don't know.
All I'm going to say is you have to watch the original Star Trek series. So
I've watched them all several times.
Well, you missed the big one because this is very important to this episode. I won't say any more because I don't want to give you a pass. I want you to do your own research.
Hell's Bells.
Do we know what season it showed up in?
Yeah.
Now you're trying to narrow it down on me.
Yeah, he's got a dirty mouth.
Let's just say that it has something to do with another satellite called Nomad. How's that?
Oh yeah. Well, all right. That like button players. There you go. You guys are so good. We just have the absolute best audience / chat participants anywhere. I got 1-2 Comic Talk. Thank you for being one of our participants. And hopefully we'll get DS back on the show who likes to wear no pants. His internet gets hijacked this time of the evening during all this COVID stuff. So when all that blows over, he'll be back on as scheduled. I still send him an invite every week, and he still ignores it every week. So we'll keep working on him. We got Area 51 in the house, Jambo Comics. And man, this thing, there's more Kentuckians in this chat tonight than the average Kentuckian has teeth. This is ridiculous. You guys want to see the arch nemesis of the average man in Kentucky? Right there. Right there. It's pulled out more falsies than Dolly Parton.
Oh my gosh.
All right, what else we got going on there? Where are we?
If Bub doesn't show up next week, we know what happened.
Hey, I love Kentucky. You kidding me? This is a great place. I fit right in.
Where's Chris?
Where is Chris? He left. He's had enough of you.
He might be a Kentuckian.
He might be a Kentuckian. If that's the case, Chris, you should have paid your electric bill.
You're scaring them off in droves, man.
All right. Reruns. Let's see. Butter Baby. That's right. All right. The Don Dizzle's in the house. Nice name. I like that. All right. We got everybody accounted for, but we lost our guest.
Yeah. And did you see what Carolina Chris did there for you?
Where is he at? I'm missing him.
Look at the super chat part there.
It hasn't pulled up on the thing.
Yeah, it's on mine.
Oh, I see it. Oh, cool, man. Thanks. There it is. Hey! And you can't see it on there, but it's a pear or chicken.
It's a flying gourd.
It's a flying gourd.
That's what it looks like, at least.
I don't know if that's what it is, Roger.
I don't know either. It's
oh, that's great.
I don't know. Is that a leaf coming off the head, or is that part of an Indian headwear?
I think it's his. I think it's his leaf. He's sprouting.
Carolina Chris is part, I believe, American Indian. So
okay, well, it might be.
That might be part of it. Chris, let us know what that's all about, buddy.
Hey, look what we found. Look, see what happens. See, now let this be a lesson to you all. If you don't give to the super chat, we don't have the internet strength to keep our guests on. So it's your.
Let me. I'm sorry, guys. Let me tell you. See, so what had happened was I was in the midst. I'm in the middle of upgrading my channel, right? And I'm really wanting to up my production for all my viewers. And I have been through 2 different webcams over the last week, and my most recent one is back in the mail being returned. So I am on my phone, and it's the first time I've ever done anything on my phone. So I apologize, guys. I'm trying to work through it. Otherwise, I'd be bringing you, like cinematic high def quality. But today I'm just.
I love it.
I'm a bit knocked down.
Oh, you're doing good. Don't worry. Some of Roger's best stuff is done when he shuts his camera off. We have Area 51 Mike's in the house. Glad to have you. We've got Tim, our Comic Mag Bill over at Comic Mag Musings is here. Good to have you. Good to have you. Let's see. Jackson Roy Kirk. Hey, look at Rod the Rican sharing that positive energy. Thanks, brother. Good to have you in here. Love that hat. Love everything you got going on the channel. He had a great stream yesterday. So really enjoy that. As always, a community shout out. Just a top-notch fella in the comic community.
Thank you very much, Rob. Thank you very much, Rob, for that. Poor Roger. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I'm glad you understand. Unless somebody understands me.
I'm sure he does. And we got the boy who had 7. I felt like I saw Silver Age Dave in here somewhere.
He was in there. Yep.
There he is. Silver Age Dave's in the house.
Yep.
All right. We
got a rocking and rolling chat tonight.
Well, we better get to the topic. That's what they're really all here to hear about.
I would hope.
Thanks, Silver, for sharing this on the community tab. I appreciate that. It's good stuff. That is always welcome. So let's see what we got here. We have a great topic for tonight. Does anyone remember what the topic is? This time, since Chris got to answer the last one, and we want to be fair to everybody, let's go ahead and ask Chris what the topic is.
How did I know that was going to ask? I've been on this show too long. I know exactly where he's going, Chris. I mean, sorry.
Okay, well, let's see. As you can see here, I have some awesome books. I have Spider-Man, the gold variant from the Todd McFarlane, #1. And then we have a most controversial book, Annual Uncanny 14. So being that I have these two on screen, I'm going to assume that the topic is books to invest for us to retire on.
All right. Before you get into that, we got $1.07 to start your collection from the Comic Collector.
All right. We even got the tax.
One of those books is you could get 2 of them for that.
Tim's even spreading for even putting the tax in there. So man,
absolutely.
Thanks.
And he didn't even put a message for us to be mean about.
No,
everybody's learning the system early.
Yeah, it's obvious, man. It's obvious.
All right, Journo. Let's he's talking about 90s books to retire on and or send your kids to college. You can at least send them to boarding school if you just drop them off and don't know how to get home. But yes, we're talking about 90s books this evening. And basically what I just want to go over, it's going to be kind of a free chat about it, whatever you want to discuss. I have a couple of things I want to talk about as well. But we, as always, we start off with Roger. This will be no different. We'll let Roger take the topic away. Well, no, actually, we usually start off with DS, but since he's not here, have them there matriculated into the top spot there. So it's a law of attrition around here. Well,
okay.
We got Johnny 5 Alive. Thank you. I love that name. That's one of my favorite all-time movies.
Input.
It holds up. It is. Wait, hold on. We got one of those, don't we? Where is he? I lost him, Roger.
What?
Oh, wait.
What?
There he is. Need more
input. Need more input.
All right,
that was too
fun.
That was too
it's a serious show, Chris. I hope you realize that this is we want to be informative and educational, but barely entertaining. That's what we're here for.
There you go.
So go ahead, Roger. Tell us anything about the 90s you'd like to discuss, comic book wise, please. Let's stay on topic. But before you do that, we got the comic back music for BUB'S Queen Sonia Fund. I tell you, everyone's pretty sure I'm going to pick Queen Sonia as my cue book for my contest, but they may be surprised, is all I have to say.
Bub doesn't throw any fastballs. They're all curveballs. All right.
Absolutely. I do like them curves. All right, Roger.
You know it. Well, first of all, I put Chris's link in the chat. Everybody, if you're not subscribed, do yourself a favor, do it, because if you see that first bit, he did a great video telling us why it's not the first Gambit in the whole bit. So go watch that video as well. Anyway.
Well, thank you.
See, I do watch your stuff, Chris. I just don't always comment because I watch it sometimes like late at night. I'm like, I'm old, dude. Anyway,
full disclosure, Roger makes sure that he watches the first 3 minutes of your last 3 videos of each guest we have before. So if you ever want to throw him a curveball, just ask him, what's my sign off? And he's like, I don't know. I'm a busy guy.
Idea. No idea. No idea. No idea. No idea. Don't ask me that. That's embarrassing.
Yeah,
So 90s comics. I mean, we were talking, I think, before the chat with Chris that really, when you're talking about 90s, you're talking about two different eras to me, right? There's the pre, as far as Marvel goes, especially. There's the pre bankruptcy, desperation Marvel, and then there's the post when they hired the Image guys to essentially take over and try to rejuvenate the line. DC was actually fairly stable throughout. You know, they had gone through Crisis and then Zero Hour in '94 to sort of clean up a few things. But I think the one thing that a lot of us remember from the '90s is all the gimmick covers, right? It wasn't a lot of people. They were trying to sell other aspects of the comics rather than the stories and the art. So, like, for example, this Legionnaires, it's a poly bag and it has a trading card inside. You know, you have these Avengers covers, which they had gold, bronze, and silver. I didn't bring the gold one. You know, every 2 months they put out another shiny cover. You know, so that's the kind of thing we kind of remember. But there were some really good events that occurred in the '90s too. You know, I remember, and quite a few of the titles. Guardians of the Galaxy was another one that I used to collect. Chris, I don't know if you collect these. I think you have a few in your collection, as I recall. And this was a team that was like, along with the New Warriors, I think were kind of like, sort of defined the '90s for Marvel. You know, they revamp other aspects of characters and try to put them in a more exciting and more, you know, showy kind of position. That was kind of like what the early '90s were about, trying to find a way to use characters that were established, but put them in other situations to try to, you know, sell them, to try to promote them, to try to, you know, build them up, because a lot of the creators from the Bronze Age and the Copper Age were kind of either falling off or they had moved on to independence because they were more lucrative. You know, remember, this was a time when Marvel was still, you know, holding on to their properties with a tight fist, while other companies, independents, were giving the creators more credit and so forth. So anyway, I talked a whole bunch. Let's see what you guys think.
I think everything you said is right as always. And as long as I keep saying that, I don't have to listen too much. So I just, no, I'm over here. I've got all kinds of things going on. But yes, I agree. I think that I'm in the same boat as you. When I think of the '90s, I think of events. I think of gimmicks, especially the foil covers, which is funny because I had a ton of foil covers. And that was one of the things that I collected a lot when I first got back into collecting. And I think I've got rid of most of them. I was looking through my collection. I couldn't find any. There's got to still be a few in there somewhere. Yes, and we had the trading cards as well. I had a bunch of trading cards. So that is also a big deal for that. So
yeah, a lot of inserts as well. A lot of like little, sometimes you had stuff like Kool-Aid bags, you had promotional cards, you had little stickers and all kinds of stuff, you know, that were ancillary to the comics themselves.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I didn't think so. I just think it just at the point they put more effort into that than they did into the stories and the art, and that's when it went downhill.
Well, when I was a kid, collecting in the '90s, I collected more trading cards. And so whenever there was a comic that had a trading card in it, I usually would go for that. That's like the only time that I picked up modern comics was when they advertised a trading card, because I was like, well, I don't have to feel bad about my trading card budget going to comics if they come with a trading card and it might be the one I'm missing. Unfortunately, they almost always had like the same card in them. Like at least the Marvel ones did. The X-Men card, they rotated like 3 cards, and every time you'd open one, it'd be the same cards. So that kind of stuff.
Well, you have the X-Force one had, I think, 5 or 6 different cards, including a team card, Deadpool. So if you wanted the whole set, you had to buy 5 or 6 copies of the comic.
Yeah. I still have like four unopened or 4 or 5 unopened X-Force number ones. And I guess the Deadpool card can get you maybe like $5 or something like that.
Well, you got your money back at least if you buy 5 different ones.
Nothing wrong with that. What do you think of when you think of the 90s there, Chris? Is there anything that stands out to you in your comic collecting world?
Yeah. Well, there's a few layers. I think you guys touched on some awesome things. How about a Spawn Wizard insert with the prism? Remember those?
Yeah. That just screams 90, doesn't it, Chris? Oh, yeah. Right there. Yeah. Fabulous.
In the prism covers.
Fabulous.
That's one of my favorite ones. I don't have that one. I've been looking for that lately. I just don't want to spend like $5 online. I'm sure I can find it in a 50-cent or dollar bin somewhere, but I haven't pulled one out.
Yeah. 90s were interesting because for me, I started collecting in the 80s. I got my first comic book that I believe it was like 87. And when in those first few years, it was mostly I remember I used to go to an old bookstore that had comic books as well. And I would just dig through bins of books and it would be all old stuff. They didn't have like new issues. So I would buy old Captain America and old Spider-Man and stuff like that. So my first real taste of comics wasn't much new stuff, but until, going into the 90s, obviously that grew. So, that's why, I had up here my Spider-Man, number one, books like X-Men number one and those series with those new fresh artists like Jim Lee and McFarlane coming in and being an artist as well as a kid. I was into the stories and the art. I would sit with these books and I would draw them and copy what they would do. Another big one for me that I would go to our local comic book shop and get every month, every time it would come out, would be the Ninja Turtles Adventures. And I would draw I would read the stories, I would draw every page, and I still to this day have like portfolio folders of tons of Ninja Turtles and other early 90s comics that I would just draw from. So it was a dual love for me. It really inspired me to read and get into these stories, and it also inspired me to draw. So the early 90s are very, very nostalgic for me. Even to this day, like I showed off on Instagram my 4 or 5 issues of Warlock and the Infinity Watch number 1. And the thing with that is, for me, I love the character and I love I think it's a solid run. And anytime I find one or see one for like $1 or $2, it's like I'll buy it. Why not? So it's not like I'm speculating on it for it to be a book that I can retire on. But I really love a lot of the number ones in that area. The Doctor Strange, I believe it was a volume 3 that came out in the early 90s was a solid one. So Ghost Rider, and they had the 2. They had I believe volume 2 and then original Ghost Rider that came out in 91, I believe. So there was a lot of good stuff going on. Now the interesting thing with me is Roger was talking about when it comes to kind of the duality of what the 90s were for Marvel. I ended up, when I turned into my teenage years and I went down a really dark path and got out of comics and anything really good in my life. But so I was completely like on a whole nother planet around 95, 96. So when I got back into collecting, about 10 years after that, and I started looking back, wanting to finish runs and read stories. And I started having to buy these later 90s Marvel comics. I'm like, what the hell? What was going on? And I'm like, yeah, this is just, it was strange. It was really strange.
I bet. And there's a lot of differences. I think I guess, what do you call a lot of that? Like Copper Age, I guess. But to me, like once the difference between the Bronze Age and the books in the 90s are so huge. There's just no comparison. It's like, even whether it's DC, although DC was a little closer, but if you look at the Marvel books between Marvel in the late 70s or even mid 80s, and then the jump to the 90s, they're unrecognizable. It's really something.
No, it's like a lot of characters were like you said, if you compared them to their Bronze Age, whether they were created in the Bronze Age or in the Silver Age, the transition from silver to bronze was not that drastic, really. I mean, they got a little bit more violent, and the continuity got a little bit tighter, but the characters were essentially the same with some alterations. But if you compare that to that mid 90s to the late 90s, they started acting so it's almost like soap opera level of emotion. It's like everything was just either everything got them upset or everything got them in trouble. It was like there's no middle ground. It was all ups or downs. There was never any kind of plateauing in the stories. And sometimes that in the Bronze Age, they would do 2 issues, 3 issues where they would set up a storyline and things would sort of, it'd be a slow burn up to the event. But in the 90s, it seemed like every month you were thrown into an untenable situation. And that gets old after a while because it's the same thing over and over and over.
I agree. And it was all about a deep dive into how depressed can these characters get. It seemed like also this was the time during, I guess I always call it 90s extreme, and I think McFarlane and Liefeld were key in that. That extreme body contortion that Spider-Man was capable of doing at this time was just really, it was extreme. Everything was
exaggerated.
Wow, yeah. I mean, the number one sport was bungee jumping, and rollerblading, and it was just like, and then inline skating, and everything was adrenaline fueled in the 90s, and Mountain Dew, and I mean, just it's amazing.
That's a good point, and I forgot about that point. But you're right. Most of the heroes started getting either really buff, or like you said, just crazy triple jointed, or the women got, this part you probably like. The women got very voluptuous. Even the ones that were more girl next door types, all of a sudden got to supermodel status. Everything was ramped up. Here we go again. Ramped up to the nth degree. At least not, and that's not true for everything. DC, I think, wasn't quite as extreme when it comes to that. I mean, they had some ramping up because it's like keeping up with Marvel, I guess. But at least they had theirs were a little subtler. But Marvel and obviously we're not talking about some of the independents that like Valiant, which I think Jackson Roy Kirk brought up, which again really were very popular in the 90s, and they used also that kind of I don't know how to explain it exactly, but that kind of sensationalistic type of comic book where it was fairly vapid, really, when you looked at it, but it looked good at the time and people were really into it. But eventually when they said, man, this story and the art just doesn't hold up, that's why it plummeted in the 2000s. Absolutely went to nothing.
Right. Yeah, I think for me too, one thing is looking at, and again, using Marvel. And I was big, for me as a kid, I was big on Marvel. I mean, I read some other stuff too, obviously. I mean, Death of Superman was huge, and I read a lot of Batman too. But Marvel seems to really give an example of, where the 90s were this type of crossroads, and it probably goes outside of comics and pop culture. But as Bub, you were saying, just I didn't put that into perspective, the extremes in terms of even what was acceptable in pop culture with like our sports or just our habits day to day and whatnot. But I think it's interesting that Marvel, and one thing I'm going to use as an example is their whole resetting. I believe they did the resetting to the number ones in 96, and then they did another reset in 98. And in 98, right around that time, Marvel released the Spider-Man Chapter 1. I believe it was a 12-issue limited series, and they retconned all of Peter Parker's, story. He was like, it was, he wasn't on a field trip, just getting bit by a radioactive spider. He was like, at a kind of like what they did in Spider-Man 2, where he had befriended Octavius, and he was at this event, this Octavius event, where he was doing nuclear infusion or something, and that's where the spider came from. And it's been a while since I read it, but it was like I just remember reading it. I probably read it like maybe 10 years ago now. It was just so out of place. And I think it just showed that, you know, and like I said, maybe it had to do with the fact that the world around us was changing and they didn't know how to adapt comics. But I think on one end, when you look at some of the art, it's like, okay, well, let's dumb down the art to make it seem more like classic 1960s Jack Kirby or something. But then let's try to get fresh and modern with the stories. But then it just to me, it never settled and didn't really work very well at all. Now, of course, this is more later 90s next to the early 90s, you know.
Yeah. That was after the bankruptcy, and when they tried to reboot the company and the stories to a great degree.
Yes,
and it was mixed results at first, but eventually, you know, they came back, especially when they did some co-events with DC. They finally got the JLA Avengers crossover out of there, and that really, I think, you know, got them back in the spotlight, because now we got something that we had been, well, I can't speak for everybody, but as an old time comic fan, that's something that I wanted to see for the longest time, is the JLA and Avengers get together, you know.
Yeah.
And when we finally got that in 2003, somebody correct me on that one. I'm not exactly sure of the year, but it was in the early 2000s. I think that's when Marvel started to again ascend, because at that point, before that, you know, it just wasn't the company that I knew.
I mean,
that's all I can say.
You had some game changers, right? So you had McFarlane stepping in, doing a Spider-Man run, moving over, creating Spawn, having that Image, and then you had what I consider the reaction. And the reaction was never as good as the original product. And I think when they had all of these, yes, so there's the answer to Depulio's question. So yeah, 96, 97 was the amalgam stuff. So yes, definitely 90s. So the idea is that you had everyone chasing this style, and it just never really stuck. It never worked. It's like all the artists that were doing that style left Marvel and left them with nothing but copycats that I just don't think ever really worked. And it just devolved. And I think anyone who was going to do a good story felt like it was secondary to this new art style, and it just seemed like nothing good really came out of it for a lot of it. Now you mentioned, Roger, some crossovers. To me, you know, some of the movie crossovers were a big thing too. You had different properties we had never seen before crossing over, and some of those, this is one of my favorite storylines in all of comics. It's Batman versus Predator. I think it's faithful to both properties, and it's just done fantastic. And you got DC and Dark Horse coming together for that, you know. And then, you know, in keeping with kind of the X-Men idea, right? You got these key characters coming in from all over. You also had, again, with the kind of crossover idea, or I say cross media is what I really want to say, right? That you end up with something like Gargoyles, and that is embossed, for those of you who fussed at us for not having the exact title along with I say, well, you said this was going to be about DC. Well, it's not always, you know, it's a mix. But anyway, this is embossed cover, Gargoyles 1. So you had these cartoons that also became hugely popular. And so now you had comic book styles copying cartoons as opposed to the other way around. Now, you'll recall, especially you, Roger, you were young. I mean, you're probably what, like 45 at the time that the old Kirby cartoons came out? Do you remember those, Roger?
The Kirby cartoons?
Yeah, the old Marvel cartoons, the original ones.
You mean like from the 60s?
Yeah. So you're about 45 when that came out, weren't you?
Hey, listen, I'm not Methuselah, okay? I mean,
well, Oh man. Well, the point being, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it.
No, that's okay, man. That's okay. I know. I feel the love, Bub. I feel the
love. So the idea was that they had the old cartoons, right? And if you recall, they did not they didn't draw fresh drawings. They just took like stencils of Kirby drawings and kind of quasi animated them. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I sure do. Yeah, they were, and they reused the same ones over and over
and they'd turn them left and right. That was like,
yeah, or invert them. Yeah.
They would.
I remember the limited animation. Sure, Captain America throws his mighty shield. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the idea was that at that time the cartoons were imitating the comics. And then it kind of changed to me in the 90s, where you had some real popular cartoons. Saturday morning cartoons were hitting a heyday and a renaissance, and kids were loving it. And things were directed at kids like never before. And so now the comics were imitating the cartoons, and that was a switch. And that is, I think, what, for me, that's what Gargoyles represents, is a great, book that came from the art style. Is just amazing. And of course you had Batman the Animated Series, right? So you got those coming out, and you had a couple of key books coming out of that run, but really the whole series is just fantastic. And people say, oh, that's a kid's book. It really is. It's better than any current Batman books out there. I'll go ahead. There's a hot take. If you've never read Batman the Animated Adventures all the way through, I challenge you to say that it's any worse than it's better. I'm telling you, it's better than anything Tom King has ever put under the cowl's head. So that's there you go. Boom. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Where's Bake the Snake? Is he still here?
He might be in the smoke shack.
He might be. He's got a meat in the freeze. So anyway, and then you also had new characters, right, coming out at that time as well. And so I think when you're looking at Liefeld's influence, I think to me, the 90s for me, and again, it's going to be different for everybody, but to me, the biggest thing about the 90s were Liefeld's influence and his over-muscled, ridiculous, anatomy be damned kind of artwork, right? Then you had...
It wasn't just him, but yeah.
Yeah. And you had cartoon influence, right? And then, of course, you had Look Out. And then you had McFarlane, who, of course, not only changed the art game, but then also changed, really the whole industry for about 10 years. So I think you add these three together and you've got, to me, what the 90s was about. And that doesn't make it bad, because if we can say that the stuff in Marvel was rough and hard to read and everything, but there's some people who really started collecting comics at this time and loved it, I mean, that's brought them in. My first comic books that I ever purchased were probably in the 90s. I'd say they're probably early 90s, but they're probably in the 90s. So there you go. That's all I got to say about it.
We're painting everything with a broad stroke, but there's, of course, whenever I, or probably all of us talk, there's exceptions. There's always good stuff, no matter what year you're talking about. If you dig deep enough in there, there's always good examples of comics, no matter what era you're talking about. But in the 90s, you sometimes had to dig fairly deep to get what I would say are storylines that were up to snuff that I like. Like this particular story I thought was interesting because of the perspective of it. It's different than most stories because it's told from almost like an outside perspective. And of course, you have Alex Ross. It's
kind of like a newsreel kind of thing.
Exactly right. Like if you think about if you were watching a third party tell you about what's going on that they experienced, almost like if they give you their perspective of what's going on, their point of view. That's what was going on here. We all know what happened. Well, not all of us, but if you know Marvel history, you know what occurred. But this really put it in such a different way, a different presentation that it made it incredibly compelling to me, and I couldn't wait to. Of course, it does have '90s gimmicks because it has what do you call this, acetate cover?
I call it acetate cover,
right? Which is just, all it is it's a clear,
Yeah. Which is cool because it's kind of like a virgin underneath. If you can get past the acetate, you get to the virgin right behind it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Then, but there's all Alex Ross in here, which is the cool thing also, which is, obviously his stuff, his technique is, Chris, you're an artist, but to me, it was perfect for this type of story. When you're talking about the time frames where this is where this took place, his type of art was perfect because it has that kind of dated look to it when he wants it to be. And I thought it was just fabulous. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to that point, I mean, this is, I think one thing, all of us that lived it, especially Bubs, like you said, a lot of people started collecting during this time, and it's always going to have that nostalgic, meaning behind it. But even so, when you're just looking at the industry itself, I mean, you have to look at whatever adversity, whatever flaws or mistakes had been made, and go through all the gimmicks and what was happening during that time. I think when we look back and look at the history of comics, we could say that all this stuff needed to happen, and had lasting effect that hopefully evolved the genre, into a positive direction. And I know, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of issues with comic books today in the comic book industry, but I think we still have seen so much more positive come out of the 90s. And again, I think that's a reflection of the 90s in general. Like when you look at just pop culture and world culture and moving into a technological age, I think the 90s definitely had that impact where it was such a unique time. Things were tried that had never been done before, and some things were kind of a mess, but I think we came out of it better. And I think one thing for me, going back into comic books and looking at the Civil War storyline and how that was delivered on the pages with, coming through the 90s and going through all that and coming to a point where I think this was a story arc that really balanced being able to have this modern product to create art that was very modern, yet and tell a story that was very modern, yet still keep, the core of comic book telling and what comic books really meant. And that's why I think it really attracted. I mean, I've talked to so many people that say Civil War brought me back into comic books, and these are like older heads, people that got out of the hobby in the 90s. So, and for myself, I didn't get out of comic books just because they started to go bad, and I wasn't, it was more like personal life choices. But like I said, when I got back into it and was like, what was going on? Still, Civil War was this big pinnacle event that I really feel brought a lot of people back in. So I think without all the controversy in the 90s, I don't think we probably would have seen something like Civil War and what came out of it in the manner that we did.
I agree.
Yeah, that was a good bit, Tris. Absolutely. I agree with you 100% there. Yeah.
Yep. If you don't have all the events of the 90s and not just the comic specific events, but just all the character morphs and changes, it was a shakeup to the industry that had kind of been running its course for a good 15 years at that point, of not really pushing any boundaries or really any change, which is funny because when you talk to a lot of collectors now, a lot of guys don't like current books, and they'll say, well, nothing's good's ever come out since the 2000s and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of people are not crazy about the current comic industry, like you said, Chris, but I think there have definitely been darker times in comics than we have now. There have been times when the stories were bad and the covers were bad. People now are complaining that they have 10 great covers to choose from, and the inside the story is not worth reading. But then there are times in the 90s where we had no good stories, no good covers, no good art, the publishing was bad, the paper was bad. I mean, that's leaving ink. Although Marvel's still leaving ink in your hands now, but still, I mean, there's so many things to not like, and there's always going to be things to not like. But when it comes down to it, when you look at all the books that were published in, especially the Bronze Age, but a lot in the Silver Age as well, they're not all winners, folks. Have you ever tried to read like Fantastic Four from 50 through 100? Man, is that a slosher. Like, it's hard to get through. They're not good stories. The art's great if you like that art, but
it's Kirby.
Yeah, but the stories are rough. And that's just my opinion. And of course, somebody, that's my favorite run of all time. I sleep with a stack of them as a pillow every night. And like, all right, that's great. You know, good for you. I'm glad there's something for everybody. But yes, to me, there's definitely been darker times in comics. And if you focus on the books and the styles that you didn't like and use that to define an entire era of comics, that's not, I think that's not really fair, because overall there's always going to be bright lights, and that's kind of what we focus on going forward, you know. And there's definitely some keys in the 90s and some great books and good stories too. So, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, let's not remember. If people, you know, again, you know, you guys may remember this, but I remember that comics almost went away in the mid to late 90s because Marvel declared bankruptcy, and honestly, they were thinking of shutting things down and just focusing on other aspects of their business. There was a great groundswell of sort of fans that said, "No, you can't do this. You know, this can't be happening," and they kind of like ramped it up because if they went under, DC might have gone under as well. You know, it's a weird relationship between those two companies. So if I'd rather have mediocre stories and not so good art than nothing, I guess is what I'm saying. And the fans demanded that they at least try to continue, you know, a company and these titles that had been going on since the 60s. And they did, you know, the fans kind of stepped up at that point, as I recall, because it was that close to going under.
Yeah, I hear you. And when you look at it from that perspective, like Chris had said, also, some of these things kind of needed to happen. Mm-hmm. And, you know, why not let it happen all at one decade
yeah.
and get back on track? And I think we're kind of headed towards some major events now, especially with everything going on, the shipping delays and the production of books, and Marvel pushing some titles to finishing the current runs in digital format instead of print format. I think that we're going to see a big change for this decade. You know, that comics are going to be very different. I think what we saw in January compared to what we'll see 10 years from now at the end of this decade, they'll be unrecognizable. And it may be that there are no more, you know, floppies, as they say. So we'll just have to wait and see how that goes, and, you know, support your local shops while you have them is kind of the way I feel about that. And so let's say here, so here's a broad question for both of you. So let's say by the year 2030, comics are no longer a thing. Okay, floppy comics, everything's largely digital. Maybe there's some trade paperbacks, some special edition books come out from time to time, you know, artist editions and things like that. But for the most part, the majority of comics are now all digital in some way or pushed off to some other format in 10 years. Do you think that will inherently raise the value of some of these 90s books that are getting so much flack right now? Because there'll at least be a comic. I don't know. What do you think? Chris, we're going to you. Hot take.
Man, this is complex. Let me state something first, just to kind of as a prelude into this. You know, I just recently went to school for business, and I was in a MIS class, you know, technological information, basically. And I want to just put out there that, you know, the state of all things as we know it in about 10 years is going to look completely different. And when you talk about the Internet of Things, that's a coined term, by the way, for those that don't know. You know, we've been so used to having technology at our fingertips or in a device, right? We have TVs, we have phones, we have computers. But as you've seen, you know, more and more in sci-fi stories or movies, sci-fi is becoming reality more and more. And when we talk about the Internet of Things, our technology is going to leave devices, and everything around us at some point is going to be accessible to the internet. So say like your wall, or even just like Iron Man doing his movement in his system, building his Iron Man machines. Like something can pop up in the middle of your kitchen, and it's like a digital cookbook, and you can swipe through it in midair, right? These things are really becoming reality, and I bring that up to lead into the statement because when we look at the idea of what comic books are going to look like you said, I think it's really hard for one to pinpoint what it's going to look like in 10 years, because I do think, to your statement, we are going to have a lot more digitized content, for one, especially when, digital devices are going to probably look completely different as well. And also, though, I think that we are going to see collectors collect differently, whether it is digital content, or more certain types of trade paperbacks. I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Gem Mint Comics, but this is a diehard fan of the culture, but yet I don't think he owns one single issue. He owns omnibuses and stuff like that, and he has a museum of them. So I think we're going to see more collectors getting into things like that. But to pinpoint the question and put a straightforward answer out there. Well, this is kind of two parts. One, I do not think that in 10 or even 20 years, we are going to be completely moved away from new weekly comic books. I don't. I think they're going to be more limited. I think they're going to look completely different, but I think they're still going to be there to some extent. With that being said, and the reason why is because I still think you're going to have people that invest in, the variant, the art of the cover, the speculation on the 9.8 fresh book that I can ship out to CGC and flip, and get $100 in my pocket off of a $3.99, or by then maybe a $9.99 cover price book. Who knows? So I think there's still going to be that demand. I think it's going to be more pinpointed to a certain type of collector. But when it comes to the 90s books, especially early 90s books, honestly, right now, I think there's a conundrum, because you got these books that had 1.2 million issues printed, right? 3 million issues of X-Men #1 or whatever it was. Yeah. So you had at a time so many people hoarding these books, right? Like, I'm going to send my kids to college on them and all this stuff. But then I think we got to a point, or we're at a point right now, where these books are almost doorway to the non-diehard collector. And you can easily go to comic book stores and find the stuff in 50-cent bin and dollar bins, and they're just thrown in there without a bag or board. And then you got people, and I know people, that raid 50-cent bins for Mod Podge projects, or to cut up, or to whatever it is. So ultimately, let's get 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and those millions of prints are going to dwindle down, and I do think there is going to be a certain demand that's going to push the 90s books further. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but are they ever going to be anything close to Silver Age or Bronze Age? Absolutely not. But I think there is going to be a fun looking demand in the future, and I can't really describe what it is, but I hope that I'm around to see it play out.
Boy, the chat's really having a big time with this topic.
Yeah.
Chaos. Here, I need to wiggle a book for Chaos so he knows he's been acknowledged in the chat. It's very important to him. Yes. Usually I reserve that for people willing to give at least $1.07, but in this case, we'll let him have it.
Dollar tax.
I totally agree with you. I do think that, I'm kind of, just picking a topic out of the air there on that one, but I do think that in general, there'll be some form of comic book, some sort of handheld media of that sort, even in 20 or 30 years. I get that. But you need more than just something like that to have a hobby and an industry. You can't just have an occasional book or a limited number of titles. I mean, to see something like we have now, I think you're going to need more than that. So there's Rob Boswell. Shake another one, folks.
$7.
Hey. So I'm gonna have a lot of books to put up when this is all done. I hope you guys are appreciating this. Yes, I creased the edge of a foil cover. There you go. It's just for you. Thanks, Rob, for the super chat. But yes, I think that overall you have an overwhelming need for multiple publishers, multiple ways to acquire books, be it through directly from the artist or any kind of what do you say, like a online source, I guess, Midtown Comics, whatever it may be, or through comic shops. I think you need all of those things in order to have a thriving hobby. And I don't think that you'll have all those things in 10 to 20 years. I think that most of those things will be gone. Now, there may still be books, and that'll be the kind of thing where we'll be happy to see a young collector get into it. But I don't think you can make new collectors without having that kind of exposure of physical shops and people around as to at least draw people in. So I guess we'll have to see.
I mean, it kind of makes sense when you think about it. When we're getting more digitally dependent, shall we say, or more digitally, savvy, I guess you can say, that acclimate, right? That's a good one. Like I now watch a lot of movies on my phone because it's right. Just more convenient than me having to go to my TV and boot up the Roku or whatever that thing is, and then go through.
Boot up the Roach?
I don't know what I listen. I watch TV like once a month. Okay, so I don't know what it is, whatever it is. So to me, since my phone is something that I work with and I'm on a lot, I'm very comfortable with it, and it's very convenient, right? Now, comics to me is a whole different dynamic. The only time I will read a digital comics is like for graders' notes because I don't have the physical copy. I don't like it at all. It's just it doesn't have any. It doesn't have all the any of the charm that a comic has, right? But it seems to me like since Marvel is putting some comics now that are only digital, that maybe the writing's on the wall that they're leaning that way. Will they ever go away? I don't think so. But maybe a digital title will happen, and then they'll just compile it as a trade paperback down the line, so that you can have a physical copy and sort of have the best of both worlds. I think that's a good possibility, and kind of makes sense too, because you got the old fogies like me who want to hold it in their hands, and then you have those that want it immediately and want to know what's happening today, and are not impatient, but they're in the now. So I think some kind of transition like that will occur. But certainly, the boom that was in the 80s when there were so many comic shops and so many people collecting comics that I knew, and now it's like I have to go on YouTube to find somebody because nobody around me, my family or friends, does it anymore. So that tells you something, right?
Yeah, it seems like anymore. It seems like when you're talking to kids, which usually I'm just yelling at them to get off my lawn. But but other than that, it seems like, so in my work office, I have comics on the wall, as well as a couple of posters. I have like my original Foom poster on there. I have comics like behind me. They can't touch them, right? But they're up on the walls. And a couple of, like one or two pops in the office. So there's a couple of geeky things around the office for sure. And when kids come in, they recognize pops right away, right? They know what those are. But when they see comics, they look at me and they're like, what is that? Like, and these are young kids, and I'm not talking 20-year-olds like Roger would call them, these blasted kids, Well,
so, from my perspective, they're youngsters, right?
But I'm just talking about regular young, short people. And when they look at me, they're like, what is that? I'm like, that's a comic. It's a comic book. And they're like, oh, and they know what a comic, like they know comic books. That's in their, vocabulary. They're aware, but it's like they've never seen one in person. And so I don't know. It just seems like there's a time going on right now where comics aren't really for kids, or at least they're not as exposed to them as they used to be. And if that continues, I don't really know how much demand you're really going to have in 20 years for comic shops. You know, if that continues to go on, but that's kind of another topic. You know.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because then you look at like the evolution of the comic shop itself. Like for right now, you know, gaming. It's like I don't know any comic book shop that lasts in this day and age without at least some form of gaming customer base. So yeah, that's interesting. You know, it's like we especially myself in that when I answered there, we talked about what the product itself will look like, but what does that mean for the comic book stores, and you know how they will have to keep up on their end in order to, you know, stay relevant.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of not, I don't know how much we can really do. And what's funny is that so right before what's it? Look, I can't even remember the name. What was the big scare at the turn of the year when it came to YouTube? Copa.
Oh, yeah.
So right before the big Copa thing, right? Which turned out to be not as much a thing as far as we can tell. Right before that happened, I remember seeing all these videos and people talking about, hey, I want to get kids into comics, and let's push kids to get into comics, and then Copa hit, and we're like, well, I guess we can't push kids into anything, you know. Let's don't show any kids, and this isn't for kids, and all of a sudden, all our videos we have to talk about how comics aren't for kids. So, yeah, so it's like going right up against what we're talking about. And then on the other side, I think, Chris, you're right. The comic shops, it's kind of up to the comic industry, I think, to save themselves, because they're the ones who are making money off that, you know. So if it doesn't generate income, and they're the ones with the business plans, and they're the ones that have to find a way to make it profitable. And if they can't, there's nothing we can do, because a band of rabid fans of any particular comic are never going to agree on what to print and to go and, you know, make a print shop and get people to write the stories. We're never going to get the IP out of anyone else's hands. So, you know, realistically, the industry has to save itself, and it's only going to do that if it finds itself to be profitable. And so people complain about the prices of comics all the time, especially now, right? Or, you know, comics are $10 coming out. I mean, anniversary issues, they still don't know what an anniversary is, do they, Roger?
Nope. No, they do not.
750th anniversary issue. I'm like, holy cow, this thing's 3 times the age of America. Welcome. But they really just don't get it. And yet they charge a ton of money for these, you know, exciting events, and they fill it with, honestly, crap. I mean, all those anniversaries have been covered by so far. They fill it with a bunch of crap, and then they charge $10 for it, and then they make some crazy variant cover that goes for $300, and it's like, it just gets a little bit obscene when you look at the prices. But if that's making the industry money, you got to let them go for it, because I see all the time people are like, we got to make books $1.99 again. If you make a book $1.99 again, the industry probably implodes, because they don't want to make a small profit. They want to make a large profit. And if they can't make a large profit, they'll do something else with this IP. It doesn't have to be comic books. So
I'm going to bring up real quick. So like,
no,
when you look at
Roger, you're next. No, just kidding.
I'll keep it quick. When you look at like a company trying to get in an industry, right? You know, you have to know what your business model is. So Walmart, you know that if you're going to go to Walmart, you're going to come out with spending less money, but you're going to get crap.
Yes.
But if you go to Nordstrom's, you know you're going to spend more money, but you're going to get a solid product that lasts a while. Maybe. So maybe the conundrum in the industry right now, with those high price points, but yet still falling short of content, you know, maybe it's like, are they not understanding their place in terms of what they are as a business model, because they're just too worried? Maybe the companies or whoever, the publishers, the distributors, the LCSs are too concerned with that, you know, initial profit line than saying we want to make something that is going to garnish less profit up front, but more profit long term. And maybe this is a product of the fact that publishing companies aren't just publishing companies anymore, like Marvel, and you have Marvel Studios and you have these other properties that are bringing in millions and billions of dollars. So they're not too concerned about what their books are doing. So they're leaving it more on this high price tag to say, here, well, we'll charge $3.99, $4.99, $9.99 for a book for you guys, you LCS owners, and just, hey, we're not going to put a lot into them though, and good luck selling them.
Well, I think that it's definite that when you look at how they do. Oh, first of all, we have to acknowledge this. Hold on. There you go.
Shake 1, 2 for the boobs.
There you go. Shake one with BUB'S. There you go. I think that counts. Psylocke's a favorite of the 90s, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of them there big wieners. So good job. But yes, I think thank you, Chaos and Comics, Chris at Chaos and Comics. I think what you're touching on is very key. However, I don't know that the money that they're collecting, like, who are they taking this money from? They're not taking it from kids. They're taking it from collectors. And we're going to spend that geek budget on something. It's got to go somewhere. I mean, I have, I don't know, maybe 40 pops. And at one time that probably seemed like a lot. But when I gauge that versus all the ones I'd like to have, it's very small. Like I see more that I leave on the shelves, When I go to a comic shop, when I see a bunch of comics that I like, I don't leave them on the shelves. And the price of the books are staggering sometimes what I will spend money on a piece of paper. I mean, do you guys remember? Roger's still in this stage. So just so you know, but Chris, you probably remember a time in especially coming back into collecting, where you were like, what? $10 for a comic book? Never. I'll never spend that. You guys are crazy. And yet now, the kind of money that you spent on some of those books you've been picking up. It's what it's about. It's about what you want to get for that money. And I think that for modern books, the modern price scheme and the modern shops, if the distributors are throwing all of the burden, like you're saying, basically of profitability and pushing it onto the shops, that's a table made of popsicle sticks. That thing's going to bust quick.
Yeah,
so
that's not going to work. Yeah,
they're shooting themselves in the foot if that's really what they're doing. And I don't think that's what they're doing, because most of us have shops around us, and at least one of us has a shop near us that seems to be doing well. And all of a sudden, when a key book falls, or even a not so key book, some crappy Batman 89 or something like that, comes out in the first appearance of a character that no one's going to care about in a year, but everyone cares about today, comes out, then all of a sudden, all the books got lost from the distributor. Sorry, they shorted us. They all came damaged. We sent them all back. And then 7 hours later, they're all for sale on Facebook. And you're like, wait a minute. How did that happen? So all I'm saying is that I know that the distributors are putting a lot of weight on the shops, and they are pushing that profitability to the shops. But I think a lot of shops are adjusting to that, and they're more or less playing the game. I mean, when I look, most of the shops that are profitable in my area all have a strong Instagram and Facebook presence and online shop. And they're running comic sales and mystery boxes and all kinds of stuff. And they're just moving product. And, every now and then a good book might go for $1 less, but most of the time a bad book goes for twice the price. So they know what they're doing. So I think hopefully, unfortunately, it won't be the better shops that survive it, but I think overall shops can survive what the distributors are doing to them.
Now, some people in the chat, Bub, are saying something, and I kind of wanted to bring it up, see what you guys think about this. I know that Chris, again, has studied business and finance. So they're saying that, if you sell them at $1.99, you will sell more product. So instead of selling one comic for $4, you would sell 2, possibly 3, if you do it for cheaper newsprint, you know, and you focus more. But again, it's a paradoxical kind of issue we have here, because if you're still paying the creators the same amount, right? You have to make that amount of money to make up, you know, the overhead, right?
Right.
You're talking this is basic
at this point. You're saying
the
publisher.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Correct. Right. So what they're saying is that, okay, so like Chris was making an analogy that you have the Walmart, which I agree is terrible quality. Everything I buy there breaks after about a month. And I bought an inner tube there. It lasted like a month, and my bike that's kablooey.
Yeah.
And then if you buy stuff, you know, at I don't know, what did you say, Nordstrom? Well, they don't sell bicycle tires, but yeah, a higher end store. you have better quality, but you have to pay upfront more money. So is it feasible that you could have perhaps both things, that you have a copy that comes out perhaps, you know, the week before, and you can charge $4 for that, but then you have a lower, you know, quality copy, let's say a newsprint, no variant cover, just a regular old nice little cover for $1.99 that comes out the week after that, for those of us that are more frugal minded and want to have just a comic because of the story and the art, and not because of, you know, we're dying to get that variant cover that, you know, 1 in 50 that we have to pay $20 for or whatever.
Wait, did you say frugal minded, or did you say cheap? I missed it.
I might have thought cheap, but I said frugal minded. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So is that something that is feasible? I mean, to have that you can have the best of both worlds.
No,
Roger, let me ask you this though. So
yeah.
if there's, you know, I mean, I know a lot of, I'm always, because I've been there, you know, I've been a starving student for the last like 5 years prior to this year. But if you had, you know, your budget in your pocket, say you're going to a comic book store with $100 to spend on some new books for a week or a month or whatever it may be. Now that dollar amount isn't changing, right? But say you go and there's the book there that's $2, or a book there that's $4, or it's either $2 or $4. And you buy it and you read it, regardless of if you spend $2 or $4, though, if that story doesn't speak to you, knowing that the next issue that comes out next month, if it's $2.
I'm sorry, you kind of faded out.
You cut out. You cut out for a minute there.
I didn't hear the last part.
Chris at Journals and Comics is experiencing some technical difficulties. Please give him a moment to work it out and make sure everything's going all straight. Okay, is he there? Is he there?
Okay, you got me? You got me now?
There you
go.
All right,
we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was saying, so, you have a set budget, right? And you go to a store and you buy a comic book. Now, let's say that comic book might be $2 or it might be $4. But you read the comic book and it doesn't speak to you. The story's like bland, the art is whatever, and it doesn't really do anything to you. When when the next issue comes out that next month, regardless if it's $2 or $4, is that price point going to make a difference in your decision to buy that next issue?
Well, it would. I'll tell you why. Because I'm much more patient at $2 than I would be at $4. So okay. I might give them another couple months or so and see if something improves. Well, if it's $4, I'm dropping that like a hot potato.
Right.
So I mean, that's my perspective. I just brought out that scenario because I'm just thinking of perhaps alternate ways that we can. Sometimes, a lot of people, it's like it's black or white, but maybe there's a lot of gray here that we can, perhaps find a constructive way of modeling things so that you can take care of both types of collectors. I understand that there's collectors that have to get it right when it comes out and want those variant covers, and that's fine. I have no problem with that. But there are others who just really want, the story, the art. They just want to have a physical copy that they can read and they can appreciate, and they don't need all the bells and whistles. So can we have a Dollar General type of a product versus a Nordstrom, or I don't go to high-end stores, so I have no idea what they are, whatever those are, so that we can take care of both. Those are two types of clienteles, right? So why can't we take care of both types of clients? That's what I'm proposing. Maybe I'm wrong here. I'm just saying maybe there is some way that we can do that.
Honestly, I think that there is, but my problem with the current system is that, and this kind of goes across the board of all digital media. Digital media has an inflated price.
Mm-hmm.
It's a ridiculous inflated price, and it's meant to compete with the physical price of an equitable good, which is not fair.
Right.
So when a movie comes out to own on Blu-ray, let's say, and then a movie comes out to own on digital, they're priced too similarly. Because we all know that the digital copy, there's no way that the distribution of that digital copy has near the cost of the distribution of the physical copy does. It doesn't take up shelf space. You don't have to involve a middle retailer, all this other stuff. You know, it's just
no shipping.
It's completely inflated. And that's not just movies, you know, it's music. It's most certainly comics and video games and all that. So when you look at these comics now, why are you charging me $4 for a digital, basically the right to download this thing? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If you're going to tell me that the margins are so tight on a physical book that you can't lower the price below $3.99, and then tell me, oh, and the margins are also that tight on on a digital copy, that's where I'm out. I'm telling then to me, the industry is trying to tell me that they don't care if I read it digitally or if I read it physical copy, because no matter what, every time someone buys a book from them, whether it's digital or not, they want to get their $4. And I think that is where the opportunity lies to have your Nordstrom and your Kmart. You know, that's where you're at. You're at the intersection where you can provide digital comics to people who want to read at a greatly reduced rate. And I know some people are going to say, well, you can get a subscription for this and a subscription for that. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. You know, but still, you're either getting that or you're getting the physical copy. And I think not every book would probably need to be in a physical copy. I mean, when I go to the movies now, it's crazy because everybody goes to see the same 2 movies. It can be a movie theater that's got 8 showing. It's an octoplex. There you go. There's your word for the day there, Roger. When I go to the octoplex movie theater, they have, 8 movies and everyone's all going to see 2 of them. And they're running those things in 3, 4 theaters, trying to make sure they got as much people they can pack in at once. And nobody's seeing that. You can walk into one of the other movies. I don't care if it's a love story or a comedy or a drama or something. There'll be like 10 people in there. There's nobody in there. You're basically watching it by yourself. So it seems to me that when I see all these movies coming out of theaters, I'm thinking, why isn't that going straight to digital? Because if somebody wants to watch it, they'll watch it. And you're wasting your money. You're wasting the theater's money because they have to, rent these things or license them to show. It just seems like a big waste all over the place. And so it belongs that way. In the same way, I think that a lot of comics belong straight to digital. They're not worth having a physical copy of. But that's probably just my bias to one publisher or another or whatever. But that's what I say about it. Gosh darn it. And get off my lawn, Chris. Thank you. These kids. These kids and their floppies.
So you have an octoplex. Well, I guess here where I live, we have a duplex because there's only 2 theaters in there, 2, screens. But yeah, I mean, I think that, but Chris, why do you think that they do that? Do they charge the same for digital? Is that kind of like, well, is that to help out the comic book shops, or is that there's an other underlying reason there?
Well, I think Bub said it pretty well there. I think it's almost the opposite. It's like when you think of comic books, man, now you actually got me because I started thinking about what I was going to say, and then I'm questioning what I was going to say in the first place. But, it just goes to show that, the price itself is not based on, keeping a certain percentage of profit margin, because obviously, like Bub said, there's so much more profit involved in being able to, you know, put something out digitally than making that physical copy. So ultimately, yeah, so you would think, I guess to your question is, if they made digital copies like 99 cents or $1.49, why would anyone want to go buy the physical copy? I guess that's kind of the point you're trying to make. So by keeping it, you know, at the cover price of the actual book, it's going to keep more people buying that physical book. But you know, one element, and I don't think this is in totality, but one element could be, like Buzz brought up, subscriptions. So let's look at Marvel Unlimited. If I don't mind digital comics, right? Because I just enjoy reading comics, and I might buy physical comics here and there if I can find it for a good price and read it. But hey, look, if it's on my phone or on my computer or tablet, even better for me. So, but if I'm looking at each book being $3.99 to download, I'm like, man, that's tough for me to afford. But look at this, I can get a digital subscription for $9.99 a month. Let me go that route. So maybe those high digital price points almost push you to buy that residual that's going to bring them residual income with that membership. So, I mean, you could say the same thing for streaming services, right? So you know that you can download this new Lion King movie for $19.99 to own, or, you know, $6.99 to rent, but you could pay $6.99, $7.99 for Disney Plus, and you can have it there with your membership. So this may be partly in strategy to really push more of that subscription membership residual income for these companies.
That's interesting.
That's
interesting. Makes sense.
What's unfortunate about that to me is that when I go to a comic shop, I don't like it so segregated. I don't want to see DC. Like when I go to a shop, I don't like it when DC's in one half of the building and Marvel's in the other half, and then indies are like in a small aisle in the middle. Like that always bothers me when I go to a shop that does that. Just make it all alphabetized, new books on one wall and all back issues the rest of the shop. I prefer that because that's how it feels when I shop for digital books. Okay, so I need a subscription to DC, to Warner Brothers DC, which is a freaking crap fest. Just the app and the platform altogether sucks. Okay, or then I get Comixology, it's got a mix, or I get, you know, Marvel Unlimited, and then what about for my more indie books? Where do I find those? By the time I'm all said and done, I'm still paying what, $30 or $40 a month? I don't think I like that. You know, that's where I'm start checking out again. Otherwise, I'd rather go find, you know, if they're going to be $4 a piece, I'd rather go find 10 great books a month and say, okay, you come into this comic shop, you give me $40 a month, and you can pick out any books you want. You can buy 10 books out of this shop every month. I'd be more down for that than I would to go digital and have to pay for a crap ton of different services to get what I need. And I think that ultimately is where things will break down. Now when Diamond, right? Because right now Diamond's having some trouble, but let's say they weren't, right? Let's say they were rocking and rolling and no problems as of recent, right? You get Diamond to open up their own service for comics.
Digital distribution.
Yeah, digital distribution. And now you have something because they already have agreements with all the publishers. Now everything funnels through one place, and all I need is one membership to Diamond that could be worth $20 or $30 a month, $1 a day. You know, you can feed a hungry kid in Africa, or you can get a comic. That's, you know, Sally Struthers on here for the price of a cup of coffee. You know, great. That's what I need. So give me that, and now I'm down. But don't tell me I got to piecemeal it together with 3 or 4 services. I hate that crap. So that's where I'm at.
I feel that way with all my Hulu and Netflix and all that right now.
Yep. Right. Yeah. That's right. Good point. I wish that I agree with that, Bub. I mean, I wish we had everything centralized. I mean, I know the competition is good as far as price points and all that, but yeah, it's you know, for old fogies like me, it's a lot of trouble to Netflix and Amazon and Roku this and Fire Stick that. You know, it's too complicated for those of us who are used to just turning on the channels and, hopefully there's a TV guide somewhere that you can see what's on or coming on soon. So yeah, that would make a lot of sense, but I think it makes too much sense. That's why it won't happen.
Yeah, exactly. That's about right. Well, guys, we have beat the 90s to death, and then somehow we got on book prices. We killed that for a while. There's a little Savage Dragon. I never much cared for that one. I like that.
If DS was here, we'd be on another half hour.
DS is still be complaining about the cost of Mylars that he won't keep. Hey, Chris, I want to thank you for being on the show tonight. I was really excited to hopefully have a good time with you tonight. And no, but realistically, so I'm telling on myself here, but realistically, I've followed Chris's channel for a long time, and we've kind of, I don't know if we started out around, I think he started out before me, but we've kind of been middling around together for a while.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed his content. And sometimes he gets a little political for my taste, but only because most people don't like politics they don't agree with. Everybody likes politics they do agree with, right? So every now and then he and I disagree digitally, if you will. But one thing I have to say is that I have respect for your comic knowledge, and I like that you express yourself, and I've enjoyed your content on your channel. At least well above 82% of it is right up my alley. And so,
wow, that's high praise, Chris.
That is
high praise from Bob.
I won't give you your scorecard, Roger.
I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Give me that illusion, please.
I definitely appreciate that. And, I just want to say too, briefly on the politics stuff, I think it's huge for you to even state that as you did, because I'm always about, when I do feel like I need to bring things up, it's always to, allow a conversation where people can, at the end of the day, disagree and still realize, let's focus on those things that we have in common and keep this community going on that path. So I want to say that I appreciated you expressing that, and I appreciate you having me on. Can I say one thing to wrap up on that might give everyone some hope, some of the viewers some hope?
No,
I know, because
we don't do that around here. We don't
he means
for anyone.
Yes,
that's it.
Let me translate that for you. When he says no, that means yes. Go ahead.
It's the apocalypse. What are you talking about? It's not we're locked and loaded. We're getting out of here.
Right. Isn't it? But we talked about some kind of, things that could be a little depressing there, like some of that 90s talk, man, is just kind of depressing. And then, of course, where we're at this day and age. But let me give you guys a little hope. So, I know we all been in a tough situation with the shelter in place and lockdown and whatnot. And, I'm hoping and praying for everyone out there staying safe and healthy. But, one silver lining is this, my kids, I ended up getting Marvel Unlimited during this lockdown. And I've been using it, but more so my kids and my son, who's turning 15 in a month. He's in high school.
Wow.
He's too cool. He's cooler than me, right?
Wow.
And he really kind of got out of comics there for a minute. And since being in lockdown, he has been reading like dozens of books a day, and he's been really utilizing Marvel Unlimited. But you know what he says to me? Because our comic book stores just opened up to very limited capacity with a lot of crazy rules right now. It's like only 6 people in the store at a time, and you have to only spend 10 minutes in there and all this stuff, right? So my son comes to me, I've been ordering, I bought him a couple books, trades on Amazon, he's using Marvel Unlimited, but he says to me, we got to go to the comic book store because we need to have that experience. I mean, Marvel Unlimited, yeah, but we got to go to the comic book store. And that just makes me so happy to know that this, almost 15-year-old kid understands that going to that LCS and going to that comic book store is in itself an experience. And I just hope that, more of this younger generation can understand that. So I'm happy to put that out there. And I just want to tell everyone, keep, if you have kids, keep involving them. If you have, nieces or nephews, keep involving them, or kids in your community, just keep involving them, and that love will still definitely grow.
I agree. Thank you for sharing that. I totally get that. My son, he's 16, and I can tell you that I really enjoy the excitement that he has every time I bring home another package from the comic shop and didn't invite him to it because I can't afford his taste. Like he goes in, he's like, that looks pretty cool. I think I'll take that. I'm like, you put that back on the wall, mister. Yeah. So, it is good. I think the hardest thing for me, and I think for most people, is that balancing act. Like you had said, you kind of fall out of comics when you get into other stuff, right? So I think it's hard once you're making your own money. You guys remember when you were a kid, or at least when I was a kid, I don't know about you, Roger, if they really had sticks and rocks that really appealed to you. But when I was a kid, I go to the toy store and there, I remember
we use clubs and caves.
Was it clubs? I thought that
clubs
was
and
just
caves.
For dating.
Yeah, clubs and caves, boulders, all right. Square wheels, the whole bit.
Oh, square wheels. So I remember as a kid walking into a toy store, comic shop, whatever, and seeing all these things. And I remember thinking, man, when I have a job and I'm making a bunch of money, just like everyone else, right? Just like all these adults, I'm going to walk in here and I'm going to buy every toy I see. I'm going to buy everything. Nobody's going to stop me. They're not going to tell me that's a stupid buy. And I won't have to have anybody help me with the tax. Like this is going to be great. And then you get that time and you're walking through and you're buying like silk flowers and oil vases to give to your girlfriend on Valentine's Day. You're like, oh man, this is not what I planned on buying at all. So my point is that I think it's great when the kids have the spark young. I think the hardest thing is getting that back as an adult, going back into it. When you get into your college age or post college age and you're like, okay, now do I still want to have time for a hobby? Like there was a good 15 years of my life, I had no time for a hobby. Like I was moving too much. There's no way I would have wanted to pack, 3,000 comics around everywhere I went. But, I just
10,000.
I know, Roger. You've only moved twice in your life, right? And then both times forced. So I don't.
No. Well, my comics have only moved 3 times, but I kept them with my parents for the first few moves.
No, you cheater. That's cheating. That's cheating, Roger. I know. All right, guys.
But that's a good topic for another time to explore. I think.
Isn't always
that transition time between when you were a kid and you had your comics to the adult, and then you became more of a collector. That's a good topic.
I like that. So Roger's picked the topic for next week, and now all he has to do is book a guest. Good luck.
I can do that.
Journals comics. He's busy on Monday.
I can book a guest.
So this is the second time I tried to get Chris on the show.
I'm supposed to be on dinner duties tonight. So.
Oh,
all right, Chris.
I made it happen.
Thanks for joining us. We'll catch y'all next week on BUB'S Comics and No Faces Comic Chat right here in this channel. You know it, you love it, and if not, you're here for Roger. So we're glad you could all make it. Be blessed. Be back. Chris says, collect what you want to collect or whatever what do you say, Chris, at the end of you don't say, you don't have a distinct.
Well, you know what? Since you kind of went on that tip, I'll end with our good friend OMG Chris.
Oh, yeah.
What he would say. Collect what you're passionate about and share it on YouTube.
That's right. I love it. And remember to read a comic and don't apologize for the glare. We'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.